When my daughter lost the ability to walk, I never imagined a stranger would inspire hope. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The hospital was cold and sterile, the fluorescent lights buzzing above like angry wasps. I held her tiny hand, so fragile in mine, trembling and lifeless. I could feel my heart breaking, piece by piece, like shattered glass scattering across the floor. The doctors were whispering words I couldn't bear to hear. Injury, paralysis, long-term care. Each word was a knife, twisting deeper. Ella was only 6. Her laughter used to light up every corner of our home. Now, silence filled the space, heavy and suffocating. I scanned the room, desperate for hope. That's when I noticed it. A woman, standing at the door, her eyes wide and unblinking. She was wearing a scarf that seemed almost too colorful, a stark contrast to the bleakness of the hospital. My breath caught in my throat. As if sensing my stare, she turned to me. A smile appeared on her face, but it didn't reach her eyes. She stepped forward, her movements smooth, almost ethereal. There was something magnetic about her presence. My heart raced. Who was she? Did she know my pain? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, I heard distant laughter. It echoed through the hall, bright and joyful. I turned to look, but the sound vanished as quickly as it had come. My eyes flicked back to the woman. She hadn't moved an inch, still watching me, her gaze unwavering. The air felt thick, charged with tension. Something about her felt otherworldly. Are you okay? The voice slipped from my lips, trembling. It was absurd to ask. I was the one who was not okay. But then, for a split second, I saw in her eyes a flicker of something understanding. Compassion? Was this stranger someone sent to guide me in my darkest hour? She took one step closer, and the world faded around us. The beeping machines, the bustle of nurse, it all blurred into oblivion. I was drowning in her gaze. I could feel Ella's hand slipping through my grip, the weight of her loss a heavy mantle on my shoulders. I didn't want to look away, but I had to check on my daughter. What would my life be now? What future lay ahead for Ella? I felt a lump in my throat, choking me. Would I ever smile again? Just then, the woman took a deep breath, and the strangest thing happened. The room seemed to swirl like a dream. Hope, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. There's always hope. And just like that, she began to turn away, her scarf trailing behind her like a comet's tail. Where was she going? I wanted to follow her, to cling to whatever hope she had promised. But I blinked, and she vanished into the crowd. Panic rose like bile in my throat. What just happened? Who was she? Would I ever see her again? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days turned into an unyielding blur, each moment a haunting echo of the last. I sat at the edge of Ella's hospital bed, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling my lungs. She lay there, so small and still, a tiny warrior in a sea of tubes and machines. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was relentless, a morbid drumbeat marking the hours that slipped away from us. Rounding the corner, a nurse paused as she noticed my vacant expression. "You look tired," she said gently, her voice threading through the silence. As she did, a flicker of warmth ignited within me, a reminder that even in this cold place, there were people who cared. "Just worried," I admitted, my voice cracking under the weight of my fear. The nurse nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. "That's understandable," she said, adjusting her scrubs. "But remember, it's okay to lean on others. You don't have to carry all of this alone. I nodded, the truth of her words sinking in. Perhaps I had been too focused on Ella's pain, too consumed by the prospect of a bleak future. As I wrapped my fingers around her tiny hand, I promised myself to keep searching for the flickers of light amidst all this darkness. It was during one of these fragile moments that I encountered the woman who had appeared before me in that initial haze. I was leaving the cafeteria, a lukewarm cup of coffee in hand, when I spotted her sitting alone on a bench outside. She looked up, and her gaze met mine unwavering, intense. "Have you found hope yet?" she asked, her voice soft yet resolute. "What do you mean?" I replied, caught off guard by her sudden reappearance. "The hope that exists even in the depths of despair," she offered, her smile returning like sunlight after a storm that I wanted to scream at her. How dare she ask me that? "My daughter is paralyzed," I spat, my voice rising with anger and desperation. "There's nothing hopeful about this." For a moment, her expression faltered, and I watched as the warmth faded from her smile. But then she leaned forward slightly, her eyes glistening like fallen stars. "What if I told you that hope isn't about the outcome, but about finding strength in the journey?" Her words were like a river flowing through the stone of my heart, carving out spaces I had long thought solid. I dropped my gaze, feeling the sting of frustration and fear. I could barely hold on as I grappled with the weight of my circumstances. "I don't want to hear that," I muttered, "I want my daughter back." "And I want to give you something," she said, her voice trembling with sincerity. "I met someone once, a girl like your daughter. She found a way to be happy, even without walking. If you let me, I could show you how." That I wanted nothing more than to scream back at her, to dismiss her as another deluded stranger looking to peddle false hope. And yet, there was something about her words that caught in my chest, a thread of possibility woven among the chaos of my grief. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Can you really help?" The woman nodded solemnly. "Meet me tomorrow evening here. I can introduce you to her. You'll see that there is more than one way to live a beautiful life." Against my better judgment, hope, that elusive creature, began to unfurl inside me. I nodded, feeling an unfamiliar surge of anticipation mingled with fear. Shivering under the weight of uncertainty, I managed a weak smile before she disappeared back into the crowd, leaving me with nothing but questions. That night, as I sat by Ella's side, clutching her hand and watching her chest rise and fall with each breath, something shifted within me. A small flame flickered in the shadows of my heart. Dreams for her life began to take shape once more, a life rich with possibilities, untouched by her limitations. But as the nurse visited and checked Ella's vitals, everything changed. "We might need to talk about a potential transfer," she murmured, compassion evident in her voice. My heart sank. "There are new treatments available, but they're not at our facility." The words like stones dropped from her lips, sinking into my stomach. The thought of leaving the only place that had cradled my daughter's care for weeks sent ice coursing through my veins. Panic surged within me, and I felt lost again, like I was spiraling into an abyss of despair that I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the wave of dread crashing down. "What does that mean?" I whispered, my voice breaking as I gripped Ella's hand tighter. "It means you may have to make some difficult decisions." The nurse's gaze was somber, but I sensed her kindness leading me through this treacherous path. "However, I want you to know you're not alone. Many parents have walked this road before you." Tomorrow felt impossibly distant, a maze of uncertainty ahead. I would be faced with another choice, a direction that could change everything. The unknown frightened me, and I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that this was only the beginning of an even darker journey. I drew in a shuddering breath, longing for the warm embrace of hope again, but as I looked at Ella, I realized I could not let fear define our story. Holding her hand with a fierce determination, I whispered, "Tomorrow, we'll find a way, my brave girl." But deep down, as I finally let sleep take me, the dread slumbered just beneath the surface, waiting to reveal its own shocking twist. The next day would demand everything from me, and I willed myself to be ready. The dawn broke, timid and gray, as though the sun itself was hesitant to fill the world with light. I sat in the same chair, the knots in my stomach tightening as the minutes ticked away, each second echoing louder than the last. Today was the day I would meet the woman who might hold the key to rekindling my hope for Ella. But as I glanced at my daughter, sleeping peacefully, the turmoil inside me felt insurmountable. The morning passed in a haze of hospital noise and clinical chatter. I watched as nurses moved like clockwork through the ward, their smiles earnest yet tinged with sympathy. I barely registered the words they spoke, my heart too consumed by an anxiety that ran like wild fever through my veins. The hours dragged. I left Ella's side only to grab a quick, cold breakfast, but even as I ate, I replayed the promise of yesterday's encounter in my mind. Finding strength in the journey. Could it even be true? Around midday, a doctor came to discuss the potential transfer. "It's a tough decision," she said kindly, layers of professionalism woven with compassion. "You owe it to your daughter to explore every option." But the more she spoke, the more my heart sank under the weight of uncertainty. That afternoon, I was drawn back to the bench outside. The woman I'd spoken with yesterday was indeed there, her demeanor calm, serene. She looked up as I approached, a faint smile playing at her lips. Something in her presence reminded me of the warmth I felt when I first met Ella. Promise of joy yet to unfold. "You came," she said, her eyes brightening. "I'm so glad that I hardly know why I'm here," I blurted before I could think, the vulnerable truth slipping through my defenses. "What do you have to show me?" With a gentle gesture, she motioned for me to sit beside her. "I want to introduce you to someone special," she said, her smile softer now. "But first, what do you wish for your daughter?" The question caught me off guard. I had spent so many days buried in immediate concerns, medical battles and decisions clouding my mind that I'd forgotten to dream about brighter tomorrows. "I want her to be happy," I confessed, a lump forming in my throat. "More than anything. I just want her to find joy in her life, whatever that looks like. That is deeply powerful," she responded. "And I promise, she can still have that. Come with me." I stood, my heart racing as she led me through hallways adorned with bright art and hopeful murals, a stark contrast to the sterile environment I had grown accustomed to. Each step felt heavier, as though I was carrying the weight of my fears along with me. Finally, we reached a room where laughter floated through the air like sunlight. A girl, maybe a few years older than Ella, sat surrounded by her friends. She had a bright smile that seemed contagious, sparking glimmers of warmth even in the sterile atmosphere. "Hey, everyone," the woman said, gesturing. "This is Ella's mom." The girl turned to me, her gaze piercing yet filled with understanding. "I was paralyzed too," she said, her voice clear and strong. "And I found a way to live life fully. I want to show you how to." My breath caught in my chest. I fought against a wave of emotions, disbelief mingling with flickering hope. What did that mean, to live fully without the ability to walk? Could she really understand my pain? The girl's eyes, filled with determination, seemed to carve through the shadows in my heart. "It's not easy, but I promise you, life can still be beautiful. Let me help you and Ella find joy again." In that moment, surrounded by laughter and the innocent playfulness of youth, a crack appeared in my despair. I could feel something shifting inside me as I watched this girl, lively despite her limitations. There was power in her spirit, a lesson waiting to be learned. But just as hope began unfurling, the door swung open with urgency. A nurse rushed in, clearly distraught, her face pale as she approached the girl I had just met. "We need to talk now." A chill cascaded over the room, snapping me back to reality. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with the woman beside me. There was something sinister swirling beneath the surface, and for a moment, it felt as if the light we had just dared to embrace was flickering again. In the aftermath of that terse exchange, the girl's vibrant energy drained, leaving her pale and apprehensive. A sense of foreboding hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "What's going on?" I whispered, my voice barely carrying above the rush of uncertainty. The girl's eyes met mine, flickering with a mix of fear and resolve. "Sometimes, the path to a beautiful life is paved with unexpected shadows. You must be ready for anything. As she spoke those words, I felt the ground shift beneath me, uncertainty spiraling like a dark tide. We stood at the brink of something monumental, something that loomed larger than our hopes and fears combined. The revelation hung in the air like a promise unfulfilled, and I understood this journey had only just begun. I stood frozen in place as the nurse urgently whispered in the girl's ear, her expression contorted with concern. The laughter from moments ago felt like a cruel memory, fading into the sterile walls around us. Anxiety twisted within me as I searched that young face, desperate for answers. This moment, which had been delicately filled with hope, now threatened to collapse under the weight of an impending storm. We should go, the woman beside me suggested softly, yet her eyes betrayed a deep unease. As we turned away, I glanced back at the girl, your courage and light dimming within that room. How could such brightness be snuffed out so quickly? My heart ached with the realization that we were all bound by an unpredictable fate. We stepped into the hallway, where the sterile fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A sense of urgency pressed in around me. I wanted to reach out to the girl, to tell her that we needed her strength, but I also knew how fragile all of our hearts had become. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched my phone, contemplating whether I should call Ella, share with her the possibility of something brighter, until I remembered the girl's haunting words. Ready for anything. After a few somber moments of walking in silence, the woman took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I thought it would be easier to share this journey together, but she hesitated, her gaze resting on the floor as though it offered some answers. No, I interrupted gently. You've shown me something. Hope. I paused, considering how to frame my thoughts. But what happens when hope is shattered? If you could see that girl light up in the room, and in that instant the world around her shifted again, how do we hold on to our dreams when darkness threatens to overwhelm? What she's facing now won't be easy, the woman said, her voice filled with empathy. But I believe that with every challenge, there is an opportunity for light to shine through the cracks. We just need to learn how to look for it, how to nurture it. We continued to walk through the bustling hospital, and I started to notice the small moments of kindness: a nurse pausing to share a joke with a patient's family, a doctor offering a supportive shoulder to a distressed parent. They reminded me that even in the direst of circumstances, humans could be vessels of empathy and understanding. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the hospital's social worker, Brenda. Can we talk? I have important updates regarding Ella's treatment. My stomach lurched with apprehension. My mind raced with what she might reveal. Would it bring a flicker of hope or plunge me deeper into despair? I need to answer this, I told the woman at my side. Brenda knows more about Ella's condition than anyone. Of course, she replied, her smile returning, as if she understood the gravity beneath my worry. I stepped away to take the call, my heart thundering in my chest. Hello? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Hi. I'm glad I caught you. Listen, we have talked with a specialist who is willing to take Ella's case, Brenda said, her tone sincere but urgent. However, there's a possibility that it could involve a complex procedure. Complex? My heart sank as dread crept in. What does that mean for Ella? It means uncertainty, but there is a chance to provide her with innovative treatment that hasn't been explored. It's not without risks, she explained. You know the stakes, and I understand you want the best for her. But it's your choice to make. As I listened to Brenda's words, a whirlwind of fear and hope clamored within me. A part of me yearned to embrace the chance, to fight for Ella's better future, while another part shrank back, terrified of the unknown. Need to think, I stammered, fighting the tears welling in my eyes. As I ended the call, I felt a sudden weight on my shoulders. This was no ordinary decision, it was a crossroads shimmering with both peril and promise. Just when I thought I had found a flicker of hope with that girl, uncertainties swirled again, tangling my spirit. The woman stood waiting as I walked back toward her, my heart racing with the weight of my emotions. What happened? She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Ella might have a choice for treatment. But I faltered, feeling overwhelmed. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail her again? Her eyes softened as she reached out to touch my arm reassuringly. Every path comes with shadows. But every choice also opens new doors, creates new opportunities. You're not failing, you're choosing to fight for her. Her words shimmered, a thread of possibility weaving through my dark thoughts. But as I looked into her compassionate gaze, I felt an emptiness, an unsettling reminder that for every bit of hope, a shadow lingered. What if this so-called opportunity led to unforeseen pain? Before I could speak further, a loud commotion erupted from down the hallway, shattering the fragile moment. I turned to see a group of medical staff rushing toward the room we'd just left, urgency etched across their faces. "Wait, what's happening?" I asked, panic rising again as I and the woman exchanged worried glances. "I don't know," she murmured, a chill creeping into her voice. "But we need to find out." As we hurried toward the growing crowd, the air thick with tension, I felt as though we were hurtling toward a breaking point. I could no longer separate hope from fear, they were woven together in this reality. Then, in the midst of all the chaos, I caught a glimpse of that girl being wheeled away on a stretcher, her face a canvas of both fear and fierce determination, and in that moment, I understood. I would have to embrace the shadows to guide Ella toward the light. But as we moved closer, I felt a gripping dread take hold. What if, in my determination to reach for hope, I was about to lose everything? The hallway was a cacophony of hurried footsteps and whispered anxieties, a world spinning with uncertainty. My heart raced in tandem, each beat a reminder of everything that hung in the balance. The sight of the girl, her body still restrained on the stretcher, burned into my mind. What dark fate awaited her? And how did it intertwine with Ella's fragile journey? "Stay close," I urged the woman beside me, instinctively reaching for her hand. There was no rational thought behind the act, only an overwhelming need for connection amidst chaos. She nodded, her grip firm. As we pressed through the crowd, I struggled to catch snippets of conversations amidst the chaos. The words, emergency, critical condition, and family, floated toward me like ominous clouds. It dawned on me that this could be a mirror reflecting my worst fears, the same choices looming ahead for Ella. The walls around us seemed to close in, and I felt the familiar weight of despair clawing at my chest. What if something goes wrong? What if I have to make decisions like this for my daughter? My thoughts spiraled helplessly, teetering between dread and the faint hint of hope left within me. Suddenly, a voice broke through my haze. "Step back, please." A nurse weaved her way through the throng, her face set in intense concentration. As she passed, I caught a glimpse of the girl's eyes, wide and frightened, searching for comfort in a world that felt threatening. I turned to the woman beside me, searching for a glimmer of reassurance. "Will she be okay?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the noise. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "But she fought valiantly to get to this point. Maybe we can channel that strength." Her words hung in the air, taunting yet invigorating. Could courage ripple through us, a collective heartbeat of defiance against fate? The echoes of the girl's earlier laughter whispered back, stirring something deep inside me. I closed my eyes for a moment, envisioning Ella, her smile, the way she often twirled around in a dance of innocence. Would she too become weary of the fight, or would she summon her own light? "Let's get back to Ella," I finally resolved, feeling a strange mix of urgency and determination. "She needs us right now. I can't waste any more time." With that, we turned to make our way back. Yet, as we navigated the maze of emotions in that hospital, the air shifted with an unexpected strain. Another nurse rushed past us, her voice alarmed. "We've got to stabilize her. Transport in 5." The words sank in, deeper than I cared to admit. My breath caught in my throat, realizing that they weren't just words but a truth that echoed with dread. I couldn't shake the thought. Was the girl's struggle a forewarning of the battles yet to come for Ella? And just as I began to push the fear aside, my phone vibrated again in my pocket. With trembling hands, I pulled it out to see Brenda's name lighting up the screen. Glancing at the woman beside me, I hesitated for a heartbeat. I had barely processed the last message, but the urgency clawing at my insides propelled me to answer. "Brenda," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I am sorry to interrupt," she said, her tone clipped, anxiety threaded through each word. "I need to warn you, the specialist we contacted has some caveats. Ella's condition could worsen, and if we wait too long for treatment, we might risk missing crucial timing." Panic surged through me, choking out my ability to think rationally. "What do you mean? How bad could it get?" I could hardly keep the tremble from my voice, as the implications clung to me like a dark shroud. "It might involve significant surgery, and if we don't act soon, her prognosis could change drastically. I don't want to pressure you, but we need to make a decision." The weight of her words crushed down upon me. It was a choice too significant, one that could tether me to despair and fear or kindle a flame of hope for Ella. Before I could utter another word, a shrill cry erupted from the hallway, the unmistakable sound of beeping monitors, the frantic shouts of the medical team. The thickening tension settled over us like a heavy fog, stifling hope and drawing everything to a climax. "What's happening?" The words slipped from my lips as dread spiraled through me. Just then, a doctor pushed through the barriers, determination etched into his features. "We need to clear a path. She's crashing." The urgency in his voice gripped my heart, a cold hand wrapping itself around my chest. In that moment, my world shattered again. The girl, the intricate web of hope we began to weave, it all felt impossibly fragile. I caught sight of her again, teams reviving her, the taint of desperation clinging to the air like smoke. "Focus," the woman beside me urged softly, but I could barely keep the tendrils of despair from my mind. If they couldn't save her, what hope did I have left? And as I turned away, a surge of heartbreak sliced through me. A pulling realization cut deeper than before. Sometimes holding on to hope meant witnessing its fragility firsthand. Would I have the strength to withstand it a second time? In that crowded hallway, as chaos clashed against the flickers of compassion, one question lingered, the most haunting of all. If the light I sought vanished before my eyes, who would be left to guide Ella when the shadows fell? As we moved back toward the waiting room, the air thickened with tension. I felt the woman beside me tighten her grip on my hand, her knuckles white against the intensity of our shared fears. I could see her trying to maintain her own composure, yet her eyes shimmered with vulnerability. In that moment, we were bound by something deeper than mere circumstance, an unspoken understanding that transcended our individual struggles. We reached the waiting area and I was immediately engulfed by Ella's absence. The chair where she should have been sitting, legs swinging with innocent impatience, felt like a gaping void in my chest. I wanted to close my eyes, to retreat into memories of her laughter echoing in our home, but the reality was stark and unyielding. "Where's my daughter?" I turned urgently toward the nurse behind the desk, desperation coating my words. "She's in examination," the nurse replied, her voice steady but lacking the warmth I so desperately craved. "They're assessing her condition. It'll only take a few minutes." "Minutes feel like hours," I muttered, pacing restlessly. Every tick of the clock felt like it was echoing in the empty space of my heart. The woman beside me offered a comforting smile, but it did little to ease the weight pressing down upon me. "What was her name?" I asked, desperate to inquire about the girl we just witnessed being fought over by medical teams. The woman looked over at the blurred chaos behind us. "Ava," she whispered, her eyes shimmering with tears. "She's a fighter, but something feels off. I can't shake off this feeling, can you?" I nodded, reluctant to admit that I shared her unease. The battle Ava was facing paralleled the one Ella would soon confront, and the mere thought sent icy fingers creeping up my spine. It was a reminder that despite our best efforts, life was an unpredictable a mercurial balance of hope and despair. "Isn't there something we can do?" I murmured, looking to the heavens in silent prayer. I could feel the fleeting nature of hope slip through my fingers like grains of sand, and desperation clawed at my throat. What if? But then, just as I was preparing for a harsh reminder of reality, a doctor emerged from behind the double doors, her gaze sweeping the waiting room before landing on us. My heart thundered in my chest. Had she come to bring relief or more pain? "Is your name Mark?" she asked, her tone neutral but reassuring. That I nodded, struck momentarily mute. "How is she?" "There are some challenges," the doctor continued, her gaze steady as if she read the storm churning within me. But she's stable for now. We're going to run some tests to see where we stand. But I struggled with the words, my mind flooded with what-ifs. What do we do next? As the doctor explained the options, I sensed the woman beside me leaning closer, her breath catching as she offered me a fragile connection in this sea of uncertainty. I caught her gaze, and in it, I saw a flicker of kindness, the shared desire for our children to be all right, to see them healthy and thriving. Remember, it's okay to feel, she whispered softly, her voice barely audible amidst the chatter of nurses and families. We're here for them. That alone is powerful. There was a weight to her words, a balm for my anxious heart that battled incessantly against fear. My fingers curled tighter around hers, something stirring within me, a small ember of hope rekindling its warmth. Maybe that connection, however unlikely, guided us in the dark. Perhaps it was the spark we needed to ignite a flame. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, jolting me from my contemplation. With trembling hands, I pulled it out. It was a text from Brenda that made my stomach plummet. I need you to consider the possibility of a donor. We may need to act fast. What did that mean? A donor? I felt sweat bead on my forehead, my heart racing again suddenly. The weight of the world felt unbearably heavy. Were we really at the brink of such decisions already, Mark? The woman's voice broke through my panic that I looked at her, confusion etched across my features. We might need a donor for Ella. She leaned closer, her eyes wide with understanding. Let's not jump to conclusions just yet. We'll get through this, one step at a time. Her faith did little to lessen my fear, but it did spark a flicker of resolve. I was willing to do whatever it took to ensure Ella's survival, but I couldn't shake the realization of the enormity of the choice lurking on the horizon. That I won't lose her, I breathed, more to myself than to her, but it felt like a vow, a promise sealed in the warmth of her hand against mine. Just then, the doors swung open again, and a nurse appeared, her expression serious. Mark, it's about Ella. My heart turned to stone as I felt our little moment of hope slip away. The finality of her words loomed before me like a shadow, and I braced myself for the upheaval that threatened to topple everything I held dear. I didn't know if I had the strength to face whatever news awaited. The nurse's voice lingered in the air, thick with a tension that felt as suffocating as my worst fears. Mark, it's about Ella. Each word hung like a fragile crystal, shimmering with the promise of devastating shatter. I caught my breath, forcing myself to meet the nurse's eyes, searching for a glimmer of reassurance, but finding only a stoic veneer that reflected the gravity of the situation. She's stable, she continued, but we need to discuss some treatment options. Those words, though anchored in positive intent, reverberated ominously within me. Quite the relief I had prayed for. Treatment options? I echoed, trying to grasp the enormity of her statement. The world around me blurred as I felt the ground shift under my feet. The fierce grip of uncertainty tightened around my heart like a vice, squeezing the last vestiges of hope. Yes, the nurse replied. We need to talk about potential interventions. Depending on the test results, we might need to consider aggressive treatment. Can't we just wait? I asked. The idea of jumping into a whirlwind of decisions made my head spin. Isn't there a chance she could improve on her own? The nurse hesitated, her eyes softening for the briefest moment before the professional mask slipped back into place. There's always hope, Mark. But the reality is that time is of the essence. Hope. Such a fickle concept. I craved it even as I feared its fragility, like holding a flame within cupped palms. Can I see her? I asked, desperate to be by Ella's side, convinced that being near her might dull the sharp edges of my anxiety. Of course, she said, gesturing down the corridor. Follow me. The woman beside me stood to follow too, her presence a silent beacon of strength in the maelstrom of my emotions. Without a word, we walked together, each step echoing the weight of our shared trepidations. Outside Ella's room, the chaos of the hospital dissolved into an uncanny stillness. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the sight of my daughter, the girl who had sunlight in her laughter and a dancer's spirit, now potentially trapped in a body that fought against her. As the nurse opened the door, I was greeted by the familiar scent of antiseptic mingled with the sweetness of Ella's favorite blue blanket, now draped over her bed. My heart twisted painfully. She lay there, small and brave, her chest rising and falling rhythmically, as if the world outside had lost meaning. Her small fingers clutched the blanket, a lifeline tethering her to reality in this sterile environment. "Dad?" She looked up, and in her gaze, I felt my heart shatter and swell all at once. "Am I okay?" I stepped closer, kneeling at her bedside, my voice trembling. "You're so strong, Ella. We're going to help you get better, promise?" Her voice, barely above a whisper, quivered with uncertainty. "Absolutely," I vowed, swallowing the lump that threatened to choke me. In that moment, I observed the intricate play of emotions on her tiny face, the flicker of anxiety beneath her brave facade. It mirrored the turmoil within my own heart, a conflict of determination and helplessness that no parent should ever have to face. That I felt a surge of warmth as the woman entered the room behind me, her eyes softening at the sight of Ella. "Hi there," she said gently. "I'm glad to meet you. You're quite the brave warrior today." Ella's eyes widened, her youthful innocence shining in spite of the heavy burden she bore. "Thank you," she replied, a hint of a smile lighting her face. It was a small victory, yet in this moment, it felt monumental. The woman lingered, and I could sense the comfort she provided was genuine, a quiet reminder that in a sea of despair, unexpected kindness could still flourish. My heart fluttered with gratitude. Here was a stranger who had stepped boldly into my life, offering strength when I felt depleted. "Mark, could we speak for a moment?" The nurse beckoned softly, and I glanced at Ella before reluctantly stepping away from her bedside. As I stood outside the door, the nurse's voice blurred into an amalgam of clinical terms and grim statistics, my mind drifting elsewhere. Me child's laughter in the park, the way she twirled like a dandelion in the wind, unburdened by the dark cloud of hospital walls. "Are you listening, Mark?" The nurse's words broke through my reverie. "Sorry," I said, torn. "What were you saying?" "We may have to start treatment soon. If a donor is needed, the process can be expedited, but you need to make decisions quickly." A chill ran through me, cutting deeper than the sterile air around us. "Donor?" The word hung heavy, the weight of it threatening to topple my already fragile composure. "What does that mean for Ella?" "It could mean a chance at a healthier future if we find the right match." Her eyes were earnest, but all I could see was the daunting road ahead, full of twists and unknown outcomes. "Right match?" I echoed, my voice a threadbare whisper. "Do I even have anyone who could?" The woman stepped up beside me, catching the tail end of our conversation. "Mark, listen to me." Her eyes held mine with an intensity that pulled at my resolve. "You won't have to face this alone. We can figure it out together." The word felt like an anchor amidst the storm. But as that fragile hope flickered to life once more, the nurse's phone pinged. I watched as she glanced down, her face tightening into a mask that drained the color from her cheeks. "Mark, I need to get back inside. Something has come up." The world around me seemed to tilt, the precarious nature of our situation barreling down upon me without warning. "Wait, what do you mean?" But she was already rushing back into Julia's room, and my heart sank as dread coiled tightly within me. At that moment, I could feel the air around us grow thick with uncertainty, and just as I turned to follow, a familiar face appeared in the distance, eyes brimming with intensity. "Mark." It was Brenda, her expression a mixture of urgency and fear. "We need to talk. It's about Ella." And just like that, my fleeting sense of control shattered, trailing fragments that promised to unravel everything I thought I understood. A whisper of fate wove around us, drawing tighter, and I knew that the journey ahead would demand far more than I had ever anticipated. Some moments would shatter as quickly as they ignited. And if I was to rise through this tempest, I would need to grasp hope, however fleeting it might be, with both hands and perhaps, allow a stranger's kindness to guide me through. The chilling grip of uncertainty wrapped around me as I watched Brenda approach, each step laden with the weight of unspoken words. Her brow furrowed, a storm brewing behind her eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. I braced myself, my heart racing, acutely aware that the stakes had escalated beyond my comprehension. "Brenda, what's going on?" I asked, forcing calmness into my voice, though it was a frail facade. Standing in this stark corridor, the tension between us crackled like static. I could feel anticipation coiling tightly within the depths of my being. She hesitated, searching my face for a moment before finally speaking. "It's Ella's condition. There's something they believe might have changed." Before I could process her words, the nurse re-emerged, her face pale. "Mark, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" I stole a glance back at Ella's room, where the distant hum of machines provided a haunting background to the unsettling conversation. "Can you hold on, Brenda?" I asked, urgency bubbling beneath my skin. "Of course," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The resolve in her eyes seemed to shimmer, a flicker of strength amidst the chaos. I followed the nurse further down the hallway, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. I felt the air grow heavier with each step, swallowed by tension. "What is it?" I asked, the slightest crack of panic in my voice. "There's been a change in Ella's latest tests," she said, her voice a firm contrast to the weight in her eyes. "The doctors believe we need to act immediately." "Immediately? What does that mean?" A rush of adrenaline coursed through me. The history of hospital visits had trained me to brace myself for bad news. "Is she?" "It's not. We suspect a complication arising from her initial condition. If we do not intervene soon, it could lead to further complications." The room began to spin, the harsh fluorescent lights becoming blinding as I clutched the wall beside me for support. "Intervene how? What are we talking about?" "The treatment options we previously discussed need to be prioritized. And if we can secure a donor quickly." "Donor?" I felt my throat constrict, the word echoing in my mind. I recalled conversations about stem cells and transplant possibilities, fragments of hope that had felt overwhelming a mere moment ago. "Yes, Mark. It could mean a significantly better outcome for Ella," she assured me. "But we need answers fast. We're racing against time." I turned back toward the glass window of Ella's room, heartache blooming anew at the sight of her lying there, her small form so vulnerable. "I can't believe this is happening," I murmured, churning inside with the weight of decisions I was not ready to face. "Mark, I know how overwhelming this is," the nurse said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. "But there are people out there who could help. We just need to reach out." "Reach out how?" "I don't have anyone." I trailed off, the enormity of loss sweeping over me like the tide. The friends I once thought I had receded into distant memories. The world felt impossibly lonely. In that moment, Brenda stepped through the doorway, her expression one of fiery determination. "You're not alone, Mark. I've seen what this hospital can offer. There are support groups, and people often come through with solidarity you wouldn't expect. This isn't just about support, this is about needing someone I can trust to save my daughter's life," I snapped, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I don't know who will step up, Brenda. It'll help," she said, her voice steady. "I promise." "Well, find a donor, well, reach out. We can do this." For a brief moment, her words washed over me like calming waves, easing some of the tension in my chest. I had no idea how she planned to help, but that flicker of solidarity ignited something in me. Hope, however tentative, settled into the cracks of despair. "Okay," I whispered, tightening my grip on my own resolve. "Let's start reaching out right now." The nurse's phone pinged again, but I brushed off the distraction, my focus laser sharp. The stakes were rising, and the timeline felt impossibly tight. "Where do we begin?" "First, let's get word out," Brenda replied, urgency painted across her face. "And well, connect with the hospital's social services. They can guide us on how to mobilize quickly." But just as I felt a rush of determination building, the frantic beeping of a nearby monitor broke through. I exchanged glances with the nurse, whose brows knitted together in worry. Instinctively, we turned back toward Ella's room, where frantic activity bloomed like wildflowers, and my heart plummeted. "Ella. A scream clawed its way up my throat as I forced the door open, just in time to see her small body convulsing beneath the bright lights. Medical personnel were rushing to her aid, their movements sharp and precise, but all I could feel was the crushing weight of dread. "Sir, please step back." A doctor barked, and I stumbled back, my breath hitching painfully as the reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut. "Is she okay?" I gasped, clenching my fists in desperation as Brenda pulled me back, her presence grounding me even amidst the storm brewing within. "She needs us to be strong," Brenda whispered fiercely, her eyes unwavering. But amidst the chaos, uncertainty gnawed at my heart. I had come here with a wish to find hope, only to be slapped with the raw truth that the battle for Ella's life was far from over. And as I watched the frantic flurry of activity surrounding her, a familiar terror blossomed anew, a shadow creeping over what little light remained. I felt myself asking the universe, why was the fight not over yet? Frustration turned to fury as I clenched my fists, ready to break through any barrier in my way. Ella was out there fighting for her life, and I would do everything in my power just as Brenda had promised not to let my daughter face her battle alone, no matter the toll it would take. But as I turned back to face the chaos, I was met with the piercing question, how much would I have to sacrifice to save her? And in that uncertainty, a darker thought took root. What if the fight for Ella's life came with its own sacrifices, tearing apart the very fabric of hope I struggled to weave? The world outside felt eerily still, as if time had paused to catch its breath while chaos brewed inside the hospital room. I hovered near the doorway, torn between watching Ella fight against the invisible hands that sought to drag her away and the instinctual need to shield my heart from the torment unfolding before me. The sterile smell of antiseptic, usually a comfort to me in my shifts at the ICU, now felt like a gagging poison. Despair draped over me like a heavy shroud, and every frantic shout from the medical personnel sent icy shards down my spine. Ella's small body, usually so full of life, lay lifeless on the gurney, the glass walls separating us making me feel both spectator and prisoner in my own despair. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped closer to the window, desperate to see the spark in her eyes that had always filled me with hope. Brenda stood next to me, her hand resting gently on my back. "She's strong, Mark," she spoke softly, refusing to let fear seep into her voice. "She just needs to know we're here." I scoffed, my voice trembling. "What good is being here if I can't do anything? It's everything. Trust in that." Brenda's eyes flicked between me and the chaotic scene inside the room. "Do you remember when we first met? You showed me that same fire when you talked about Ella. That flame is still in you, even now." The heat of her words washed over me, igniting something deep within, even as my breath caught sharply in my throat. I wanted to believe that I could muster the courage needed, but the shadow of hopelessness clung stubbornly to my mind. My gaze fell again on the room, where a doctor was now focusing intently on Ella's heart monitor, the ominous beeping echoing my own anxiety. Brenda's voice pulled me back from the brink. "Maybe we can contribute to her strength too. Let's channel this energy outwards." As hard as it was, I did my best to focus on her suggestion. "You think we can gather people? Organize a rally for awareness or support?" "Exactly. When you mentioned the community before, how so many lives shared similar struggles, that resonates with people. You'd be surprised how willing others are to join together. You just need to show them that someone they care about is worth fighting for." I took a deep breath, finally feeling a flicker of determination break through the haze of uncertainty. "You really think people would rally around us?" "Yes, Mark. You just have to open the door for them. Sometimes that's all it takes, one person's courage to ignite a movement." Just then, the nurse emerged, her eyes wide as she spoke firmly. "Mark, the doctors are going to need you in there. We need one of you to be with her." Panic constricted my chest again, my heart racing. What does that mean? Shay can't promise anything, but being by her side might help her fight through this. Children have a unique connection to their parents during crises. Brenda stepped closer to me, her expression flickering with urgency and quiet strength. "You'll be there with her, Mark. You need to go. She needs you." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Okay. I'll go. As I stepped into the room, the noise faded into a dull roar, a surreal detachment enveloping me as I stood beside Ella's bed. Machines beeped rhythmically, punctuating the silence that clung to the air like a thick fog. I grasped her little hand, the warmth somehow grounding me amidst the sterile chill. Ella, sweetheart, I whispered, leaning closer. I'm right here. You're not alone. Just keep fighting, okay? For a heartbeat, I thought I saw her eyelids flutter, a spark of recognition igniting just briefly before the convulsions returned, and the urgency of the medical team sharpened. I felt helpless yet achingly determined, a mixture I now understood all too well. Protect her. My heart screamed, wrenching in my chest as I called on invisible forces to hold the darkness at bay. The commotion swirled around me, and then I noticed something. A nurse who had just stepped in, her face eerily familiar. She caught my eye, a torrent of emotions playing across her features. It was Claire, the very classmate I had lost touch with years ago, someone I hadn't seen since that rainy day when our shared stories of childhood ambitions faded into a world of responsibilities. Mark, she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the din. I didn't know it was you. I came here to support a friend, and her words trailed off, and for a moment, we stood in the eye of the storm, old memories flooding back in. Claire was there, a piece of my past, interwoven with threads of hope, now intertwined with the fight for Ella's life. Claire. There was something remarkable in that encounter, an unexpected bridge connecting the present chaos to the warmth of familiarity. I didn't expect. I'm here, she interrupted softly, determination hardening her gaze. Let me help. Her presence was a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, and though uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud overhead, I felt something shift within me. Perhaps this was part of what Brenda meant about rallying together, finding strength in the community I had allowed to slip through my fingers. Just as a smidgen of hope began to settle in, Ella's monitor let out a piercing wail, a jarring reminder that time was slipping away faster than I could grasp. Claire and I turned back to see the frantic efforts intensifying. My heart dropped. The room was shifting, and the worst storm of all was just brewing. Even as I held on to that flicker of connection, the harsh reality of impending loss seeped into the edges of my vision. Would this fleeting moment of cosmic reunion spell the difference, or was it merely another cruel twist in this relentless struggle? If my daughter's fight was turning darker and the silence amidst the chaos deepened, what sacrifices still lay ahead? The question echoed in my mind, and as I glanced toward Ella, I realized I was out of time to find out. There it was again, that tightening grip of fear, wrapping itself around my chest like a vice as I took in the sight of my daughter's frail body so small against the contours of the hospital bed. I had stepped through the chaos to stand vigil beside Ella, enveloped in a storm whose dark clouds loomed ominously over our lives. I grasped her delicate hand, still warm, feeling the life pulsing beneath her skin. In that moment, no chaos around us mattered, only Ella and the unwavering love I felt for her. Ella, sweetheart, I whispered, my voice a tremor laced with desperation. I'm right here with you. Please, stay strong. Each word felt heavy, as if it were another anchor trying to hold both of us still against the tides threatening to pull us away. Days, even moments of difficulty, flooded my vision. How we once played tag in the park, her laughter ringing out like the sweetest melody, and now that vibrant spirit was challenged by uncertainty. Suddenly, the door burst open again, and Claire stood there, her former classmate who had returned like a beacon in this overwhelming night. She caught my eye, and there was a flicker of recognition trading between us, a connection that transcended years of separation. Mark, tell me how I can help, she urged, her face a mix of determination and compassion. I don't know, the words spilled from my lips, edged with fear. They're saying it's urgent. I can't lose her. Please don't let me lose her. Her hand reached out and grasped my arm, firm yet comforting, like a lifeline thrown in the midst of a stormy sea. We're going to figure this out together. I promise. She stepped closer, her presence steadying the emotional cyclone swirling in my chest. What I saw reflected in Claire's eyes ignited a flicker of hope, a candle brought to life amid darkness. Just then, I heard the sharp, urgent sound of medical equipment erupting in a cacophony, a high-pitched alarm that shattered the vulnerable silence. In an instant, panic gripped me again, along with the haunting reality of the situation lurking just outside the threshold of possibility. I turned to see the intensity of the nurses as they rushed toward Ella, urgency cascading. "Let's give them room," Claire whispered, pulling me just slightly away. But I didn't want room, I wanted to be there, to shield Ella from the haunting shadows looming ever closer. "Ella needs to see you," Claire urged gently. "She needs to feel that love." Somewhere in these overwhelming feelings, I found a sliver of clarity. "Okay," I breathed, pulling away just enough to give the nurses the space they needed and yet remain close enough to feel connected to her. As I watched them work frantically, I squeezed her hand tightly. In my heart, I conjured every wish I had ever made for her, every single memory that danced through my mind like freshly fallen snow. Ella the dancer, the little girl who twirled and spun, who played in our backyard with unquenchable joy. My breath faltered as I prayed, beseeched the universe not to take her from me. "Stay with us, Ella," I shouted through the veneer of chaos. "You are so loved. Fight, my little warrior." My plea reverberated through the sterile chaos, a desperate affirmation that I would not back down. Somewhere deep within, I knew that the weight of shared love from her community, from Claire, from our family, it all intertwined to create a tapestry of hope. And then, as abruptly as the storm had risen, the room shifted. I felt a sudden wave wash over me, a calming presence that enveloped my heart with a gentle serenity. That intricate choice, the relentless fight to nurture hope amidst despair, reverberated through every fiber of my being. Perhaps I was never truly alone, perhaps there were fragments of connections waiting in the wings, poised to guide me towards something extraordinary. Is she going to be okay? I finally managed, turning to Claire, my voice shaking. "Will she pull through?" "I believe she will," Claire answered, her voice steady despite the storm raging around us. "You are here, Mark. That means everything. It's like you said earlier, love has a way of illuminating the darkest spaces." Just then, the chaos began to subside, the nurses gradually stepping back, their faces still taut with seriousness but softer, more relaxed. "We've stabilized her for now," a doctor finally announced, breathing in deeply as though exhaling a burden she had carried for far too long. "It was a close call, and we'll keep monitoring her closely. But she's a fighter. She's shown us that." Relief washed over me like a refreshing breeze, and I felt my legs tremble beneath me. Thank you so much," I whispered, tears of gratitude pooling in my eyes. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I held on to hope, not the flickering, fragile kind that could vanish with a sigh, but something grounded, rich and unwavering. And when Ella slowly fluttered her eyelids open, the bright spark of recognition lit up in her gaze as she took in the sight of me, fear slowly replaced with strength. "Daddy?" she whispered, and I dove closer to her once again, cradling her hand with unyielding love. "I am here, right here, my brave girl," I murmured, my heart finally beginning to mend. "You're not alone. We're going to get through this together." Tears streamed down my cheeks as she smiled faintly, and I was aware that a journey unlike any other lay ahead of us. But one thing was certain, my daughter, my little Ella, was a warrior too. Together, we would keep searching for the shimmering threads of hope among the shadows, the woman who had stepped into my life on that fateful day, the memories of laughter and joy, and now the promise of healing stands embodied before me in my daughter's delicate smile. Perhaps this experience would deepen and illuminate our lives in ways we didn't yet understand. As I held her petite hand in mine, a powerful realization gripped me. Hope wasn't a destination, it was a journey, one that reinvented itself at every twist and turn, transformed by love, community, and the strength we gathered along the way. "Ella," I breathed, the words bursting forth like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. "We're going to be okay. With love as our guide, we'll find our way." And as those simple words spilled from my lips, I understood the profound truth: no matter how dark the nights would grow, we would face them together, hand in hand until the dawn broke anew. In that moment, I realized that sometimes, the greatest gift of all is not just surviving the storm, but learning how to dance in the rain.